Hey YouTube, got another book review for you today. I'm going to be uploading a lot of them today. So, first up on the stack that we got for you is Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, 1972. I thought this was a pretty good book. I'm going to start off by saying that as far as a Hunter S. Thompson book, it's a bit heavy, like, physically, as well as in the subject matter, because, it's dealing with politics, and to be honest, it has a lot of information that went over my head, especially since I was not alive at the time. This book is, 41 years old, and is dealing with the politics of Richard Nixon and George McGovern and a lot of characters who were, also running in that race before it got narrowed down to just them two. And it has some information that, for the general populace, like I said, especially if you're not alive at that time, I must admit, is a bit hard to digest and understand. But I will say that for what I did get out of it, it was pretty good. It took me a long time to read, and I didn't read it all at once. I took a break halfway through and then continued reading it a bit later on. But it's a pretty good book. It is 480 pages, and it has a lot of photographs, as well as some illustrations by Ralph Steadman. As you can see, there's some photographs right here of, Hubert Humphrey and Big Ed, and there's some, there's some illustrations by Steadman. Like, this is the very end. You can see there's an illustration by Steadman in there, It has a very, Fear and Loathing type feel to it. This book took place and was written directly after Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which, for those of you who don't know, was taking place and I don't know about published, but at least took place in 1971. I think it was published the same year. But, yeah, okay, so as far as the general premise of this book, it starts out in, let's see, December of 1971, and goes all the way up to December of 1973. So it takes place over the course of a solid 2 years, and, a lot of it is just strictly, political information, just whether it's reporting on rallies or interviews or this or that, it's just strictly political information. But there are some parts of it that actually have a little bit of autobiographical stuff about Hunter S. Thompson himself, and some personal stories that may or may not have been related directly to the campaign. And those are the parts that I personally enjoyed the most. Now, there's a lot to say about this book. This is a very famous book. It's very highly regarded as, a lot of people would say one of the best books written on politics in the past 50 years, just because it really goes into a lot of in-depth detail about the campaign, like, through and through, it covers, like, every single little detail of the campaign. It's really ridiculous, and it's really crazy and intense. It really has that gonzo journalism, that, just that fear and loathing aspect to it, I would have to say that, considering the fact that he used that same title, Fear and Loathing, for both this and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, you might think, like, oh, that's a little outplayed, or like, he's just copying what he used before. But honestly, I gotta tell you, in my personal opinion, I really think that the term fear and loathing really describes what's going on in this book. I mean, it describes what was going on in the Las Vegas, one pretty damn well. But I think that when you really think about fear and loathing, it really hits the campaign trail of 72 right on the button. I mean, it's just freaking crazy. There's some nut shit that goes on in this book, I'm not gonna lie. But here's one thing I will say about it. You really gotta kind of stick this book out. When you start reading it, if you're like anything like me, and what I like to read, like, you're kind of gonna think, like, I don't really know, like, this is okay, but I don't really know if I'm really digging this so much, but it gets better. It really gets better. Towards the end, I realized that I really did enjoy it a lot more than I did when I was, let's say, halfway through it. It really came through for me. And, I think it's a pretty damn good book. I mean, if I had to rate it,
Logged
just
into
considering the fact that,
WEFU1ISH.
I'm sorry about that. My computer kind of makes weird noises like that sometimes. Let me actually turn the sound off here. There we go. Okay, so sorry about that. But yeah, basically what I was trying to get at here is that you gotta stick through it. When it starts getting towards the end, it gets to some more. There's definitely some comedic parts, some funny parts of the book. As with a lot of other Hunter S. Thompson books, there's plenty of very serious parts. There's a lot of drug use, and it gets pretty wild and crazy towards the end. And there's definitely a lot of really good highlights in this book. As far as this book, just because it's so complex and just, such a drawn out plot with so many different aspects, I couldn't even really try and begin to do like a summary of this. So, to really get into the plot, you're going to have to read it yourself. But I will say that, I would probably give this book a solid 6.5 out of 10. It is pretty good, but definitely not one of my more favorite Hunter S. Thompson books. But that being said, I really haven't read that many of them. I've only really read a handful, so maybe as time goes on, I may put it differently on my list as I read some more. But it's definitely a pretty good book. I would recommend it. If you love politics and you love Hunter, you're gonna love this. It's really a completely different flavor than his non-political books. It really shows you that the man really had some interesting political intellect that I, at least personally, really was not aware of prior to reading this. I mean, he really seemed to wrap his head around the politics at the time, and was I guess more into politics than I knew prior to reading this. I mean, at the very least in this year of 72. But he just really explains how at that time, like, things were just so in a insane political crunch where it was like, if McGovern wins, the whole country's going to go this way, and if Nixon wins, the whole country's going to go the other way. And the thing is that Nixon was already in office, so the country was already headed down that path to begin with. So it was really just a hell of a race. I mean, you think about some of the political elections in my lifetime, and we thought those were big, but I think 72 was a fuck of a crucial year, I'll say that. But I would recommend it. It's one of the classic Thompson books, and if you're reading Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas or Rumda or anything like that, I would definitely just throw this on your list for the hell of it. But it's not really one of those books that you're gonna bang out. I mean, I've lent it to a few people, and they've just been like, man, I can't really finish this. I can't really stomach it. So for some people, it's really gonna have that kind of an effect. But if you are really big into Hunter, and I do know a few people who are really on the whole politics side of Hunter and the whole, that kind of thing, I definitely would recommend getting it. Just to have around. It's a classic. It's highly regarded, and I would definitely say it's worth a read. So that's about it. I'll see you guys later. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching.